Moses is not the real name. That's the made-up name. Pharaoh Akhenaten, who was ushering in monotheism in Egypt while he was a pharaoh, worshiping Amen-Ra, the great Amen. Amen-Ra.
Most of what Mr. Carson is saying in this is not actually correct, but the real story of Akhenaten is actually really interesting if you want to stick around for that. Hey, my name's Joe. I have bachelor's degrees in archaeology and classics. I am not a practicing or professional archaeologist. I just like to use my degrees when I can and talk about things that are really interesting within the archaeological record. There are three deities that we're going to talk about that are important to the story of Akhenaten. The first is the Aten, which is often related to Ra, but during the reign of Akhenaten, he actually separated Ra and the Aten. And the Aten is like the sun disk that you often see with Ra in pictures and in offerings, right? So what Akhenaten did is he kind of separated the two deities and only worshiped the Aten. So unlike what Mr. Carson is saying, he didn't support or worship Ra. He actually removed Ra from official state pantheon. The second deity that we're going to talk about is Ra, the chief deity of Egypt, the sun god. He came to prominence and importance in the 25th, 24th centuries BCE, and he is known and seen and worshipped throughout Egypt at this time. Third deity that we're going to talk about is Amen. So Amen is an old god like Ra. He first was talked about in Hermopolis, a city on the border between Lower and Upper Egypt. He made his way down to Thebes, where in the 16th century BCE, he became the patron deity of the city. And without getting too deep into the history of what's going on at this time, the Hyksos, who were a group from the Levant, came into Lower Egypt, or what we called Northern Egypt, around the Mediterranean Sea area, right? They came into Lower Egypt and pushed out the ruling class and established their own kind of kingdom in Lower Egypt. The displaced leaders of Lower Egypt went to Upper Egypt, established their capital in Thebes, and then some years later, during the reign of Ahmose I, he went back and conquered the Hyksos and reunited the Lower and Upper Egypt into one kingdom again. He kept the capital at Thebes, and it was during this time that Amen and Ra, two separate deities, were kind of fused into one deity. So that's why people call him Amen-Ra. And then in the 1500s BCE, you have the rule of Amenhotep III, who did not create monotheism, but he did worship the Aten as like a principal deity in the Egyptian pantheon. So he kind of separated the Aten from Ra, but he still kept the Egyptian pantheon. It was his son Amenhotep IV who would later change his name to Akhenaten to connect with the Aten and show his lineage to the Aten and his devotion to the Aten, who would go on to displace the rest of the Egyptian pantheon and create a sole state deity of the Aten. So he would have temples closed, financial support ending, no more taxes going to these other temples. It was only the Aten that he worshipped, and he wanted to make sure that the Egyptian people worshipped. Now, did the Egyptian people actually only worship the Aten? Probably not. They probably also, behind closed doors, continued to worship the other gods and goddesses of their time, but officially, state-wise, it was only the Aten. And remember that Amen was the patron deity of Thebes, right? And Thebes was the capital where all the pharaohs ruled from. So what did Akhenaten do? He moved the capital. He moved it from Thebes to a city he created called Amarna, which is, I think today, like a 5-hour drive, a 5.5-hour drive north of Thebes. And that's where he ruled for 17 years. After he died, there were two successors. We don't know too much about them. One was a woman, the other was a man, and they may have ruled for like a year or 2 years at most. But it was a third successor and Akhenaten's probable son who would become famously known as Tutankhamun. Originally known as Tutankhaten, he changed his name after moving the capital away from Amarna, where his father had ruled, back to Thebes and reestablishing the original Egyptian pantheon and making Amen-Ra as the principal deity of Egypt once again. And Tut was young when he died, I think 18 or 19 years old. So the full restoration of the pantheon would be completed under his successors. And later Egyptian pharaohs would go ahead and erase as much as they possibly could Akhenaten from Egyptian history. They called his reign the reign of the enemy. They destroyed his temples to Aten. They removed his facial features from statuary. They removed his name in hieroglyphics from temples and other places that were dedicated to him. He was effectively erased and was meant to be forgotten. But yeah, that's the story of Akhenaten. He was not Moses. He did not cross the river reeds, nor did he worship Amun-Ra. He was just one pharaoh who enjoyed and loved one god more than the others. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will put my sources, as always, at the end of this video. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I always love seeing the comments. Thanks again, and I will see you later. Bye.